All right, UFC Fight Night Taira versus Park. Full card predictions. This was originally supposed to be Bashi versus Taira, but Bashi pulled out, and we got Hyun-sung Park on short notice. So yeah, we'll start with the first fight of the early prelims and work our way to the main event. Let's get right into it. First fight of the prelims: Austin Bashi versus Yannis. Austin Bashi was supposed to fight someone else, I forget who, but he's fighting Yannis. I don't think Austin Bashi is that good. I'm sorry, well, I don't think he's that bad, but I really didn't like his performance against Christian Rodriguez. It wasn't like Cameron Simon or Raul Rosas Jr. or Isaac Dogarian's performance, where they really worked for a finish. And because of some physical disadvantage, like a gas tank or size, they lost. Austin Bashi just seemed like the worst fighter in their fight, just unable to get the grappling going, and then just being smaller and worse on the feet. But I do think Austin Bashi is good enough to beat Yannis, especially on short notice. When you got a guy that's like, as touted as a grappler, as touted as a prospect, you gotta have to, have some time to prepare for him. I don't think Yannis just assumed he was going to fight Austin Bashi on short notice, 6 weeks ago. So I don't think he's got a full training camp for a guy that I think you want a full training camp for. And I think Austin Bashi just gets it done. I don't think he's going to look super impressive and get like an early finish, like we've seen Isaac Dogarian do in other fights or Raul Rosas Jr. But I think they'll get it done by being the better fighter. Let's see, what else? Next fight up the card, Piera Rodriguez versus Ketlen Souza. I don't think Ketlen Souza is very good. I know she's beaten Yasmin Jauregui, or how do you pronounce her name? Jauregui. And I think Jauregui is one of the better fighters at 115, or at least one of the more skilled fighters. But I do think that Ketlen Souza just won that on finishing potential, which is impressive at 115. But I don't think it means she's a better fighter. She lost to Angela Hill pretty unimpressively. She lost to Karine Silva, who's not bad, but she got knee barred, which isn't a good look. She beat Marnik Man, not a very good win. I think Piera Rodriguez is actually pretty decent. I liked her winning against Josephine Knudsen. She was a pretty big underdog in that fight, and she won pretty clearly, which is impressive because I think Knudsen was one of the better prospects in the UFC. She was undefeated, lost to Piera Rodriguez, and then went to the GFL. Horrible idea. That hasn't panned out. I wonder where she'll end up. Probably in the PFL, if I had to guess, or some other regional promotion. But I think Piera Rodriguez, that win, I think Josephine Knudsen is a lot better than Ketlen Souza. And if Piera Rodriguez doesn't get finished, I think she probably wins. And I think it's not the best idea to pick a women's MMA fighter to win on like a fluke finish, because it pretty rarely happens. So I'm going to go with Piera Rodriguez. Next fight at the card, Felipe Bunes versus Rafael Estevam. I don't think Felipe Bunes, or I'm just going to call him Bunes, is that good. I think he looked kind of impressive against Jose Johnson. Losing to Joshua Van isn't a bad look. Like, I don't think you're immediately a bad fighter if you lose to Joshua Van, who's like the I think he's ranked like top 1 or 2 in the division right now. However, he didn't really have very good competition before the UFC, and he didn't really have the best performances. Like a guy, Waskar Cruz, or probably Vaskar, 13-9 guy who went to a split decision with 3 years ago. And 3 years ago might sound like a long time ago, but that was only 4 fights ago. And Felipe Bunes is 35, so that was like in his prime, and he's going to, or at least his physical prime, his athletic prime, and he's going to split decisions with like guys with shitty records. And he's 14-7 himself. Doesn't have really the best record. He also lost to Jussier Formiga, who, a former UFC fighter, not really UFC level anymore. And this was 3 years ago, which is probably a better Jussier Formiga. I just don't think Formiga was that good 3.5 years ago, and Bunes was closer to his athletic prime then. Rafael Estevam, undefeated guy, decent prospect. He's looked okay in the UFC. I haven't been that impressed with him. When you're undefeated and you're a pretty decent prospect, I want to see you get like finishes. He did beat Charles Johnson, which has aged really well, because immediately after that fight, Charles Johnson went on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak. But I'm not super impressed with him. I think that Estevam will win, but I don't know if he'll get a finish, and I also don't. I wouldn't be surprised if Bunes won. I think he's a pretty decent underdog because I think he looked actually pretty decent against Jose Johnson, and Jose Johnson is like an odd challenge because of his size at flyweight. So, yeah, I think Bunes is a decent underdog, but I'm gonna pick Estevam to win by decision. Next fight up the card: Rodolfo Vieira versus Tresean Gore. I don't know. I'm sick of these middleweight matchups where it's like we know that both these guys suck. But I just want to point out, in Rodolfo Vieira's last fight, he fought Andrey Petrosky, and I picked him to win, and then he got robbed and lost, and that was the only fight I got wrong on that card, which I'm still salty about. So I don't really want to pick Vieira, but I'm going to pick him because I don't think Tresean Gore is that good. He actually looked kind of decent in a fight where he got his ass whooped against Marco Tulio. Like, he was landing some good shit that I think would have worked well against like a worse fighter like Andrey Petrosky or, Cody Brundage. But Tresean Gore did get finished by Cody Brundage in a legitimate way. Any other time we see Cody Brundage get like he's like the fluky flukester. Like, he was getting whooped by Julian Marquez, and then, there was a break because of a mouthpiece, and then he finished Julian Marquez, and Abdul Razak Hassan finished him, but it was with the back of headshots. So, it was overturned to a no contest. He had some other fluky, like the slam KO, it's a little fluky. But he like legitimately clean knocked, or, TKO'd Tresean Gore. That's a pretty bad look. And also, Tresean Gore took a lot of damage in his last fight, so I'm not super hot on picking him right away. His last two wins both came by a standing guillotine against Antonio Tricoli, who's I'd say maybe the worst modern UFC fighter. And Josh Frampton also sucks. And I don't think you're going to get a standing guillotine on Rodolfo Vieira, who is, I think he was like an IBJJF world champion, or at least like, top level guy. ADCC, I think he was also like a top level guy. I know he's been submitted by Angel Hernandez, or what's his name? Is it Angel? Whatever, Fluffy Hernandez. And that was, not a very good look for a good jiu-jitsu guy. I know we just saw Buchecha, who's, a 13-time jiu-jitsu world champion, lose in the grappling unimpressively to Martin Budai. I just think that, like, I'm not saying that Rodolfo Vieira is going to go out there and ragdoll him and submit him in a round. I just, like, the fact that Tresean Gore's last two wins have come by a pretty rare submission. I don't think that Vieira is going to dive into a guillotine and get submitted. And I think that's, like, Tresean Gore's one of his only ways of winning in the UFC. I think that Vieira probably has an advantage in the striking. I'm sorry, not in the striking, in the grappling. And he's going to make the fight boring and win like either a point fighting kickboxing decision where he doesn't let Tresean Gore get in the pocket, or he just out-grapples him and makes it like slow and boring and wins that way. So, what was I going to say? I don't know. Yeah, I'll pick Vieira. I know people might think Vieira got submitted by a guillotine against Fluffy, but it wasn't guillotine. It was actually like a seated arm triangle, which is a little different, and he was super gassed and like beaten up. The difference between a guillotine and a seated arm triangle is it's kind of like an arm in guillotine, but you also use your leg in the sprawled out position, like the north side position to block their arm. So it's different. It's a little bit more high skilled and less fluky than a guillotine. So I don't think Tresean Gore is going to be able to land that guillotine against Vieira. Next fight up the card: Rinya Nakamura versus Nathan Fletcher. The first fight on the card that I actually give a fuck about. Interesting fight. I really think Nathan Fletcher's pretty good. I know he lost to Callum Loughran in his last fight, and I think Loughran's been since cut. But I think Fletcher should have won that fight. I think it was round 1 went to Loughran, round 2 went to Fletcher, and then round 3 was close. Loughran kind of controlled Fletcher against the cage for the whole round. And then Fletcher rocked him really badly with about 40 seconds left and like put a beating on him. And the refs just, gave Loughran the control time win. So I think Fletcher could be 2-0 again in the UFC. He beat Zigomontis Ramaska in the tough finale. So maybe I guess he's 0-1 in the UFC. But I think he's pretty good. I did like his performance in his last fight. I liked his performance against Ramaska. It's just hard for me to pick against Rinya Nakamura. I know he lost to Moon Gaffarov in his last fight and looked very unimpressive, and Gaffarov is not a very good fighter. However, I don't know. It's just I know Rinya Nakamura is good. Like, I know he's got the skills to beat a guy like Nathan Fletcher, and if he doesn't have a performance that bad, I really struggle to pick against him, against most of the bantamweights outside the rankings. So I'm going to pick Nakamura, especially when you consider that Fletcher was so easily held against the cage by a guy who is kind of just block-headed and strong. Rinya Nakamura is pretty fucking strong in the grappling. He just shot some pretty bad takedowns and gassed against Moon Gafurov, who didn't look, it's not like Rinya Nakamura got whooped. He just couldn't get going, and Gafurov won like the in-between moments where he couldn't get going. So if he ever gets going in this fight, I can trust him to get a takedown, maybe get a submission, maybe get a ground pound TKO. But more than likely, probably just control Fletcher, don't let him get going on the feet, and beat him. And I think that's more likely than not. So I'm going to pick Rinya Nakamura. But again, I like Nathan Fletcher as an underdog at plus 300. Yeah. Oh, before I forget, because I know I'm going to forget later, if there's one bet I would advise you to make on this card is you can take Hyun-sung Park, go to DraftKings, go to UFC Bets, go to Futures. Hyun-sung Park to be the champion at the end of the year next year is plus 15,000, which is 150 to 1. I don't think he's going to be the champion by the end of the year next year, but if he beats Tatsuro Taira tonight, which is significantly more likely to happen than 150 to 1, he's going to go from plus 15,000 to like plus 6,000. And if your cash out is pretty good, you can get a lot of money off that. Or you could just hold that bet out. I think there's more than a, sub 1% chance he's a champion by the end of next year. So that's a good bet to make on that card. I will tweet that out. And again, you can check in the description. I have my Twitter link. But yeah, that's a good bet to make. Anyways, next fight up the card, Nick Klein versus Andrey Pulyaev. I'm picking Andrey Pulyaev, and this is another one of those like middleweight fights where we know both these guys are shit. Like, Pulyaev did basically nothing against Christian Leroy Duncan. Nick Klein rocked Mansour Abdulmalik, and other than that, kind of got his ass whooped. But we know Mansour Abdulmalik, had a really shitty performance against Cody Barnage where he needed to headbutt him to finish him. And that fight has been turned over a no contest, so it's like Nick Klein, we know he's not good. Pulyaev, we know he's not good. I'm going to pick Pulyaev just because he's got a size advantage. Like, he's 6'4" versus the 6'1" Nick Klein. And I don't like how shaky Nick Klein looked against Mansour Abdulmalik, who was also a pretty big opponent. So I'm going to pick Pulyaev just to maybe use his size to outpoint Nick Klein and probably win by decision, or maybe, I don't think I'm going to get a submission because I think Nick Klein's a pretty good fighter, but I can see Pulyaev out-grappling him, fully based on the fact that, he is from, that region of the world, the EV Russians. He also trains under Alexander... I just dropped my phone. He trains under Alexander Shlemenko, who is a pretty legit coach, and he's younger than Nick Klein. So if anyone's improved more since the last fight, I imagine it's probably Pulyaev. So, yeah. Next fight of the card, Danny Silva versus Kevin Vallejos. I'm picking Kevin Vallejos. I think he's actually pretty legit. He is tiny for the division, like I've said every time he's fought. He's 5'7" at 145. Not a very good look. I know Austin Bashi is 5'6", but that's not exactly the the golden standard of size in the division. Vallejos will be giving up 2 inches of reach and 4 inches of height, which is not good for fighting. You don't want to be significantly smaller than your opponent. However, I think Vallejos is actually pretty good. He's got good boxing. His only loss is to Gene Silva, and that was by a 29-28 decision on the Contender Series. I think both of them have improved significantly since their fight, and I think that Vallejos is pretty fucking legit, in spite of his size. But I really think he should go down to bantamweight. He would be short, compared to a lot of bantamweights, but I think that he's got a significantly better chance to win there, given that his style is like getting on the inside and throwing hooks, which you don't want to have to do against someone who's bigger than you. So yeah, Danny Silva arguably lost to Josh Kulabau, arguably lost to Lucas Almeida. Not a very good look. He's also much older than Kevin Vallejos. So again, if any one of them has improved more in their since their last fight, it's probably Vallejos. I'm thinking Vallejos finds his chin in the first round and finishes him with a big meaty hook over the top. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say for that fight. Next fight up the card, onto the main card. The last fight was also on the main card. But we got Magny versus Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. I'm picking Elizeu, Zaleski, dos Santos. I think he's looked, I don't want to say like in his prime, but he's looked pretty decent in his last few, other than the Chidi Njokuani fight. He made a close fight with Rinat Fakhretdinov. He made a close fight with Randy Brown. He beat Zach Strogan by, I think that fight was on short notice, but he beat him by finishing the first round. And Neil Magny has looked very out of his element. I know he beat Mike Malott, but he looked horrible in that fight until the last minute. And if that fight was 14 minutes instead of 15, he'd be on a 4-fight losing streak, with his last win being a split decision over Phil Rowe. The thing about Magny is that if his opponent is going to throw leg kicks and he's not going to be able to just take his opponent down and beat him up, then I don't like him to win the fight, because he doesn't check leg kicks, and he's 37. I don't think that's going to change at the age of 37. So Elizeu Zaleski is smart enough. He's a veteran of the game enough that I trust him to just know to throw leg kicks against Neil Magny, but won't check them. He's got pretty decent kicks. I trust that he can beat up the legs of Neil Magny. My only concern is that Neil Magny is actually pretty solid out of the clinch. He's done some good damage. He did some good work against Jeff Neal in the clinch, and that is where Zaleski got finished in his last fight, and that wasn't that long ago. I think he got knocked out by Chidi Njokuani on the same card. Was Chidi Njokuani, right? I'm not stupid. Yeah, it was. Okay. I'm pretty sure that was on the same card that Kevin Vallejos' last fight, and Vallejos won by round 1 knockout, and Zaleski lost by round 1 knockout, and they're coming back on the same card. Not a good look for Zaleski, but other than that, I think that he should have the advantage. Magny got knocked out in his last 2 pretty badly. Carlos Prates put him on a t-shirt. What's his name? Michael Morales knocked him out with spinning elbow pretty bad. And Magny didn't take a lot of time off between those 2 fights, but he's taken 7 months off since his last. So I don't think his chin's going to be completely gone, but I think that if Zaleski has a bad chin in this fight compared to what he normally has, he probably has a similar chin to what Magny is coming to this fight with. So I think Zaleski has the advantage pretty much everywhere other than the clinch. And if he can use leg kicks, if he can, look good, like he looked good in the grappling against Randy Brown, and I think Randy Brown's probably better than Neil Magny. So if he can keep the fight where he wants it, which is everywhere but the clinch, I think he pretty easily wins this fight. So I'm gonna pick him, either by decision or maybe he gets like a cumulative leg kick, TKO. Like I'm trying to think of a kind of like what's his name, Marcos Rogerio de Lima versus Junior Tafa, or whatever the Tafa brother he fought, where he just kind of lit up their leg and then they just fell over and couldn't get up. Next fight up the card. Why is this on the main card? Karol Rosa versus Nora Cornolle. I'm picking Nora Cornolle. I think she's actually pretty good. I don't know why she's the underdog here. Karol Rosa looked like shit against Aylin Perez, who isn't that good. Who'd she beat? She beat Pandy Kianzad, who's not that good. She beat Irene, she lost to Irene Aldana. Lost to Norma Jamont. Who'd she beat? Yannis Santos. That's horrible. She lost to Yannis Santos. Why is she the favorite? Nora Cornolle, I think, is actually pretty decent. She's got 4 fights in the UFC, and I think everyone she's fought in the UFC, other than maybe like Melissa Tanya Mullins and Haley Cohen, pretty decent. Like she beat Jocelyn Edwards, and I think Jocelyn Edwards is now on a 3-fight winning streak. She lost a split decision to Jacqueline Cavalcanti, and I know that fight was on short notice, but Cavalcanti is actually pretty solid. Like she knows how to throw strikes, and she knows how to grapple at least a little bit. So I think that's a pretty decent win. I think a lot of people thought that Cornolle won that fight. Or not a win, but a decent loss to have if you make it a close fight. And a lot of people think that Cornolle won that fight. She finished Melissa Tanya Mullins in the first round. She's fighting a bum, which we now know because Melissa Tanya Mullins just had a shit performance. But she was a pretty big underdog in that fight and got a finish in the first round. Not a bad look. Karol Rosa is... I thought she was older because she seems older, but I think she's worse and smaller, which is not a very good, she's 5'5" at bantamweight. Not a very good look. Nora Cornolle is the same size as Kevin Vallejos. So, I don't know. I trust her to win this fight. I think she's probably maybe a little bit better in the grappling and a good bit better in the striking. And Karol Rosa is just shit, so I don't know why she's the favorite. I guess I'll probably eat my words because every time I pick a fucking underdog in women's MMA, they get their ass whooped. But I think Cornolle's a better fighter, so I'm going to pick her. And she's bigger, so... next fight on the card, actual good fight alert. This is one of the 4 good fights on this card. Esteban Ribovic versus Elves Brenner. I'm picking Esteban Ribovic. I just think he's pretty good. I think this fight will probably be similar to Nazim Sadikov versus Nicholas Mata. And I know that's pretty high praise, but Both these guys go forward constantly, similar to that fight. And I think that, like Nazim Sadikov, Estevam Rubic is just going to be the more technical guy. But I think that, like Nicolas Mata, Elves Brenner's got a pretty good chin. He's hard to put away, and he always throws back. If you watch the Rebecki fight, or not Rebecki, what's his name? Oralbai fight, he's throwing back even when he's getting out technique. If you watch the Goran Kututeladze fight, he's getting out technique and he's throwing back, and he landed and he finished Kututeladze. So he's always gonna be dangerous throwing back. Rubic might be a little bit worried about constantly going forward. Because of his last fight, he kind of just got countered more often than he landed. But I don't know. I think that he'll have good success going forward in this fight, and just landing a lot in Elves Brenner. And I think it's less than likely that Elves Brenner either implements the grappling or has a lot of success in the countering. Because I just think that Rubic has fought like pretty good counter strikers in what's his name? Fuck. The tall guy, Zellhuber, and he was able to like pretty easily outclass Zellhuber. I know Zellhuber just had a pretty shitty performance in counter striking against Michael Johnson, but I think he's pretty decent, and Rubic looked really good against him. So I'm gonna pick Rubic to beat Elves Brenner just by volume, just kind of beating him up on the outside, and then when they get on the inside, he's gonna outland him, but maybe take more damage. But if the fight remains on the feet, I think that Rubic just has the technique advantage and the volume advantage. So I'm gonna pick him. Usually those are the fighters that win. Not rarely, but like most of the time, if you have the speed advantage, the volume advantage, and the technique advantage, you're just going to land more than their opponent. And if they don't find that like one-shot knockout, you're going to win the fight. So I think that's what's going to happen, is unless Elves Brenner finds the chin check, Rubic should win. And Rubic has never been finished. So, yeah. Next fight of the card, Chris Duncan versus Mateusz Rąbecki. This is actually a really good fight. I think Chris Duncan is madly overrated. He opened as like a plus 200 something, 250, something like that, underdog, and the odds moved more in his favor, which I think makes sense. This is a pretty hard fight to pick. It's just how good is Chris Duncan, because we saw him fight Manuel Torres and just get taken down and submitted right away. He looked good against Balajiaki, but Balajiaki isn't very good. And the Jordan Vucenic fight, it's hard to know what to make of that, because on paper, Jordan Vucenic is a much more skilled grappler, and maybe a more skilled striker than Chris Duncan, just based on their accolades and like who they fought. But Duncan out-jabbed Vucenic, made him shoot, and then when he shot, he got a guillotine and submitted him. And even before then, when they got in the grappling, Duncan had more success in the grappling. So it's hard for me to pick Mateusz Rąbecki, or Rebecki, however you pronounce his fucking name. But I just think Rebecki's really good. I think he's pretty underrated. I know he had that bad fight against Carlos Diego Ferreira, where he just got hurt really badly because he wasn't moving his head, and just completely like lost all forward momentum in the third round and got finished. But before that, he was looking pretty good. He was outworking Carlos Diego Ferreira on the feet and in the grappling. You see the Oralbai fight. He beat the fuck out of Oralbai on the feet, a guy who's pretty technical and pretty defensively sound. And I think that's going to be the difference maker. Chris Duncan has looked good against people who are going to, technique their way into a fight with him. But like if you watch the what's his name? Charlie Campbell on the Contender Series, he got dropped, and then he was able to find the chin of Charlie Campbell and knock him out when the fight became a brawl. Or when he brought the fight to a brawl. But if you watch like the Manuel Torres fight, when a guy comes to him and just throws technique kind of out the window and goes for a finish, and just goes forward and beats him up, Manuel Torres got the finish right away. And Vucenic, tries to use technique and tries to make it, technical and clean. And Chris Duncan, beats him up and finds the finish. But I think Alex Rebecki's going to bring a brawl, go forward, try to find a finish. And I think that he's going to either have success in the grappling, just taking him down, kind of doing what like Volkanovski does, where he takes a guy down and then sits in a guard, like an open guard, and just beats him up from there. Or he's going to be slightly better on the feet and then land harder. I just don't see Chris Duncan I don't know. I know he looked good against Vucenic, but I don't really see him doing like a Rubic performance where he does a lot of volume and outlands a guy and out-techniques him. Like I don't really think he's that clean on the feet. And I think that if they're going punch for punch, Rebecki's going to find success, because Rebecki, went punch for punch with Oralbai and won that fight. So I'm going to go with Rąbecki, whatever his name is, by decision. But I think he could find a finish if he really goes for it in the grappling. So yeah. You always got to watch out for that Chris Duncan guillotine. He's finished his last 2 with that. And he's always dangerous on the feet, but I think that Rebecca's probably the better fighter. But if Duncan wins this, he's really a prop in the division, given his nickname. And he's probably looking to the rankings next. And I think he's a good matchup for a lot of the guys just outside the rankings. So I want to see the winner of this fight against like a, what's his name, the Chilean guy, Ignacio Bahamondes or Ludovic Klein or something like that. A lot of cool matchups for just outside the rankings in lightweight. So yeah, next fight of the card, Taira versus Hyun-sung Park. I'm picking Taira. The reason why I'm picking Taira, I know I said you should bet on Hyun-sung Park becoming the champion next year, but I think that Taira is really good, and the main thing that I'm picking for is he's hard to prepare for, and Hyun-sung Park has taken this fight on less than a week's notice, or maybe about a week, and that's just hard to do. As far as the matchup goes, if they had a full camp, I might pick Park to win this, just because Taira does not move his head, and he's not the most defensively sound guy, and if he can't get the grappling going, then he's really going to struggle to beat you. But when Hyun-sung Park is preparing for Steve Erceg, he's not preparing for super low, double legs or high outside single legs, like or trips in the clinch and shit like that. And if Taira can just get those takedowns on you and end up on top of you, he's probably going to beat you up. I can see Hyun-sung Park having success on the feet early, but again, just taking this fight on short notice, he's probably preparing to, start cutting weight like around today for his fight against Steve Erceg, and instead of that, he had to start cutting weight right when he signed this fight, and so like his camp's kind of been thrown out of the water, and he's completely changing his game plan for the type fighter he's going to fight. And I think Taira's just really hard to prepare for on super short notice. You're going to want a 6-week camp dedicated to starting on the grappling and fighting the striking while keeping yourself safe in the grappling. And I really don't think you're going to have that same camp against a guy like Steve Erceg. So I'm going to go Taira to maybe lose in the striking early, but find the grappling late and beat up Hyun-sung Park in the last couple rounds. Maybe get a round 4, a round 5, ground and pound TKO or submission. So yeah, let me know what you think of those picks. I'm sorry if I'm a little monotone. I woke up really fucking early for the Kenshiro Taraji fight, and I stayed up really late for the Super Risen 4 card a couple nights ago, so my sleep is really out of whack. And the sun has been in my eyes the entire time I've been talking, and it's hot as fuck. So yeah, let me know what you think of the picks. Like the video, share the video, comment if you agree or disagree, or if you want to hear more about a certain pick. This video will be a playlist with all my predictions from this year. Follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description. Again, go to my Twitter if you want to hear more information about the picks. I'll be live tweeting the event. I'll be live tweeting other combat sports events, as I have been for about a year and a half. So yeah, that is all. Thank you for listening.